Welcome, 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 everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast. I'm your producer and host of the show, Dr. Lino Martinez. This is your motivational podcast of people's incredible journeys. Oh, yeah, let's do this. Welcome back, everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast. Today, I would love to welcome Constantin Morun. Constantin is a passionate advocate of personal growth, self-discovery, and professional development with over 15 years of experience. Through his journey from a fear-ridden man, hiding his authentic self to embracing vulnerability and authenticity, Constantin demonstrates that self-discovery can unlock the keys to personal and professional success. As a holistic life empowerment mentor and coach, he inspires and empowers individuals on their unique journeys towards growth and self-discovery through both his professional and personal life, as well as his podcast, Unleash Thyself. Welcome, Constantin, to A Little Less Fear podcast.
Thank you, Dr. Leno. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be here talking with you and your audience.
Absolutely. And I can't wait to be on your podcast, honestly. I really love our connection so far. Thank you so much for being here. So, Constantin, this is a personal growth podcast about people's journeys, and you've got an incredible mission here in life to inspire, empower, create positive change, unleash thyself podcast. What led you to where you are at today? And you can start wherever you'd like.
Thank you, Dr. Lino. I guess we should start with how I grew up. I mean, most of us, if not all of us, have such unique and beautiful stories. Now, mine started in Eastern Europe. I was born in Romania, which at the time was a communist country. Now, mind you, it was a communist country for the first 7 years of my life, so I didn't really realize what it really meant. But it was a time of scarcity, of fear, of a very different way of living, which meant that most people couldn't really be their authentic selves because there would be punishments, there would be people that would not be accepted, and many other things would happen in life. So, of course, I grew up in an environment that wasn't advocating for a growth mindset or for someone to be truly who they are meant to be. Right? So I remember, for example, from my earlier years, that I wasn't necessarily allowed to show emotion. I wasn't allowed to cry, right? Boys pull their pants up. And I'm someone that's extremely emotional. So for me, growing up, and of course, later on in my life, it was very tough to try to always hide who I was. But I became very good at it. So fast forward to when I was about 17 is when my parents, my brother and I moved or immigrated to Canada. And of course, different culture filled with many beautiful people from all over the world. And that's the first time when I realized how different we are, but yet how similar we all are. Because even though I came from Eastern Europe and I had friends from Africa or Asia or other parts of the world, we all had similar struggles. We all had something that we were not happy with or not proud of. But at the end of the day, we could coexist, form relationships, and move on. So that's really where my journey started. But it wasn't until, again, we fast forward to my mid-30s, and I'm 40 right now, when I truly understood what a growth mindset is and how personal development should be approached. It's not that I was necessarily doing it completely wrong before, because I don't believe in right and wrong per se, or like black and white, but more like I wasn't doing it for me. I was doing it based on what everyone else was telling me to do.
Yes. And when you do it based on how everyone is telling you how it should be done or what to do, there's like an uneasiness to the things that you're doing. It's almost like you're walking on eggshells, unsure, without full clarity. And that's because you're not really stepping into your full authentic power. So what happened after that?
Absolutely. And I'd love to add one more thing before we go into what happened next.
Yes.
But you're absolutely right. It felt to me like I was living multiple lives, because with friends and my partner and family, I could be me. But then in my professional life, I couldn't necessarily bring the joyful Constantin. I couldn't bring all the jokes, and I couldn't bring my authentic self. And similarly to other friends in my life. And there was something that someone said a long time ago that really resonated with me. It's like we try to do things in life and do things in life to impress people we don't even like. And that happens in your professional life and it happens in your personal life all the time. And what I've realized that comes from, at least for me, that fear of rejection, that fear of being alone. So you're like, but I need friends. I need this, I need that. So now I need to pretend, I need to be someone else.
So true. You know what I'm thinking as you said that? When people in general, I mean, I can put myself into this too in the past before I really discovered what authenticity was. We start to wear all these different masks, and the masks of a son, the mask of a daughter, the mask of a boyfriend, the mask of a girlfriend, the mask of a father, a student, whatever it is. And when you're wearing all these different masks, these different identities, you start to lose that authenticity. It's like, and when you can actually find that authenticity, you can start taking off all these masks and all these different placements that you have been in. And that's it. That unleashes so much stress, and all these bricks off your back come off, and you're able to live more lightly. So yeah, it's really incredible. It's so far, your story's incredible. I'm glad that you are where you're at right now. And yeah, let's continue. So what happened after this?
I couldn't agree more with you, Dr. Lino. And yes, so what happened after this is I actually joined Microsoft, big organization, about 6 years ago now. And that's when I really first stumbled upon the term growth mindset. It's not like the idea was new to me, but the term and how it was phrased and all the content around it was fairly new to me. And because I joined an organization that hires top performers across the board, that meant I joined an environment that was very competitive. And I'm a very competitive person myself. I have a degree in mathematics. I was pretty serious with sports growing up and in my teenage years and my early adult years. So I'm not one to shy away from a bit of competition, but it also meant I had to take a look in the mirror and say, okay, how can I stay at the top of my game now when I'm surrounded with all these amazing people, and of course resources from which I can learn. So that's when my true journey of personal transformation and growth began, I would say. But it wasn't until let's say about 3 years ago, when, like yourself, I allowed spirituality to finally make its way into my life. And I don't mean that in a religious type of way, because I grew up religious. I was a Christian Orthodox based on my family and how most of Romania is. But I distanced myself from religion fairly early in my life because it wasn't something that resonated with me. But spirituality kept trying to make its way into my life, and I was either put off by it, or I didn't have the right environment for it to flourish. And for me, spirituality is essentially the idea or that connection with everything around us, with the idea that there is a purpose or a why or a reason behind you and I being on this planet. And I remember being a young child when I first asked the question to my parents at the time, what's our purpose on earth? And I asked that question many times in my life, but I never really found an answer until much later in my life. And that's when things really began to change. When I said, you know what, I got to sit down with myself. I need to find out my why, my purpose. And sure, I may not have the full picture, but at least I have a part of it that guides the rest of my life. So I can remove those masks you talked about. I can become more vulnerable and more authentic. So then I can have more joy and fulfillment in my life.
You mentioned right now before what you just finished saying right now, that spirituality kept trying to make its way to you. In what ways was it trying to make its way to you?
Yeah. So first of all, that's a great question. And the way I see life right now, and looking back, of course, we have 2020 vision when we look backwards. I realized that the universe, God, your higher self, whatever one believes in, it will plant seeds along the way or signs along the way. And we are very good at ignoring those signs. And for example, I remember one time in my life, I was about 25 years old. My ex-wife and my brother were both suffering from depression, anxiety, and a few other things. And medication wasn't working, therapy wasn't working. So my mother found an alternative healer. And as part of the therapy with this alternative healer, it required all of us to make our way to her and have individual sessions so we can all understand how to better interact with our family members that were suffering and help them through the process of getting better. And I remember I was one of the first people to actually go talk to this lady. And before sitting down with her, she asked me for two things: my full name and my date of birth. And the reason she asked for that is because she had a small calculator, did some math, and came up with a chart. And this chart essentially told her what not only my purpose in life is, but my strengths and my weaknesses, or as they call them, my gifts and my challenges. And then she started talking to me about me, really. And keep in mind, I'm a 25-year-old. My ego is pretty high. I feel like I'm on top of the world because I have a math degree. I have a good career ahead of me. I'm doing a lot of things entrepreneurially as well. So I was on cloud nine. But she starts telling me things that no one in my life knew, like why my relationship with my mom was a certain way, or with my partner, or with my brother, why I was facing certain challenges in my life because of the codes that came up in this. And I remember sitting there and I'm like, she must have talked to my family, because there's no way someone could know this much with just a date of birth and a name. And it turned out that she didn't. She didn't talk to anyone else. There was something there. I couldn't necessarily explain it. But, that went on for a few months. I went to a few sessions. So did the rest of my family. My brother and my wife at the time started to feel better. And because of the distance that we had to travel for it and the cost, we kind of drifted away from that. So I would say that was kind of like the big first moment when something was like, hey, you know what? There's more that you got to dig in. But of course, again, young and I had my mind on other things, and I didn't have the environment. So I didn't pay attention to it.
So then when you got that, it was hard, it was difficult to continue to see this woman. And so you still had questions in your mind.
Absolutely.
What was that about? So how did you dig deeper to find out what that was all about?
So if you fast forward about 10 years later, right, when I was about 35, 36, when I joined Microsoft, it was at the same time I was going through the separation from my ex. We parted on great terms. We're still best friends to this day. But both of us remembered that, hey, this lady knew a lot about us before, and we really didn't dig much into it. So we actually went back on our own. And at this time, she was doing virtual sessions, so it's much easier to communicate. And that was kind of like my first foray into actually trying to understand more about me and what's making me unique and why I have certain challenges and certain gifts and how I can foster more of those gifts and overcome some of those challenges.
Mm-hmm. And what did you discover?
I discovered a lot, but again, that was 6 years. It took me about 3.5 years to really put everything in motion. So one of the things I discovered, which I knew from my earlier childhood, but I never really paid attention too much to it, is that one thing that motivates me and drives me is the idea of creating and bringing new ideas to the world, challenging the status quo. Not because I want to be a rebel, but because I want to look at old beliefs and say, hey, maybe it's time for us to consider something else. But also because I'm someone that loves to learn. And then as I learn, I love to share with others. But when I truly understood that that was at the bottom of, let's say, my purpose, according to what she was doing, it allowed me to dig deeper and deeper and use methods that weren't spiritual in nature to really dig at my why.
And so when you started to really digging into your why, is this when you started to discover who you were authentically?
That was the beginning. And for me, at the time, it was a journey that took, I want to say, about 4.5 years by the time I really came onto my clear why and purpose, at least a big part of it. And the reason it took me so long is because perhaps my ego didn't allow me to really seek out mentors that could help me, or didn't allow me to find out the right information, or perhaps there were other reasons. But if I know the information I know now, I could help myself, my older self, or others to find their why or purpose within months. It's just a matter of me not having the right information and still the right environment to foster that understanding.
And so you discovered your why and your purpose, correct?
Yes.
Is why and your purpose, are they different?
I would say, like everything else, it depends.
Okay.
It depends on the person. So here's why. I mean, for me, I call it my purpose. And that has a spiritual connotation around it. And some people are not spiritual. So when I work with people that are not spiritual, or I talk to people that are not spiritual, I usually revert back to the why. Because everyone understands the why. Like, why you're doing what you're doing, what drives you, what motivates you, what makes you smile at the end of a day. Right? That's really...
I love that.
right? Some call it your mission, whatever you want to call it. To me, it doesn't matter, right? It's like we as human beings, at least my understanding is that we take words and we put our own definition to it. And then over time, there are some bigger voices that will put more definition on one thing, so then it becomes more negative than it should be, right? Because there's many words in the English language that have a negative connotation. Like I'll give you an example. Let's take the word consequence. As soon as I say consequence, it's almost always a negative thing.
Yeah.
But
Right.
is it really, right? Because every action has a consequence.
Very true.
But it doesn't mean it's bad, right? And
Yeah.
funny enough, one of the parts I've learned in my journey through the growth mindset is that really everything that we deem to be negative or positive is just a label we apply to it based on our understanding of the world.
Right.
But nothing is really good or bad intrinsically, right? It just is. As in, like, let's take an example, water. You know, I have a glass of water in front of me here. Is water good or bad? What do you think, Dr. Leno?
I love it. It's great. It's
Oh,
fantastic.
awesome.
It
Okay.
unites
But
us
what
all together. It's one consciousness.
it does.
Yeah.
But what if, and this just happened actually recently where I live, what if the rain doesn't stop and it rains for like 3 days? You're going to have floods. Is water
True.
bad now?
No, it's still not bad.
Well, for some people it is, right? Unfortunately, I have some friends that lost, their basement, and they were cursing and they were not happy with the outcome. And they labeled water, oh, this water is so terrible for me. But again, it goes back to our perception, right? And whoever is in whatever scenario. So that's why when you ask me the question, right, with the purpose, the why, again, it's like whatever you want to make of it. If for you, why it resonates, use it. Purpose, perfect. And that's why I like to be as open as I can to all of these, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter the color of your skin, your background, your religion, where you live, we can all help each other be better at what we do. So if it's just a matter of changing the words or how we talk, then so be it.
It's absolutely definitely changing the way that we talk and the words that we use and the feelings that we give these words, because all feelings are going to create emotion and momentum, and all your thoughts and your feelings are together. They're one. And thoughts are basically your belief system. So it's really, people need to really be careful about what they're thinking, because it's creating a blueprint in your life.
Yes.
And then, it could be detrimental or it could be very positive and beautiful. You know, when you said about consequences, that they can be good or bad, because every circumstance has a consequence, correct? Every action has a consequence.
There's something that comes out of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I've heard that every action has a reaction, and I feel that's my way of changing the word consequence from every action, because consequence can come across negatively, but again, it depends on how you define a consequence.
Exactly. And the way I use it as well is every action has an outcome. The outcome can be favorable or unfavorable. Right. And then, of course, I go with consequence, like I said, reaction. But even reaction can have a negative connotation, right? Like if
That's
you're talking,
true.
be like, hey, Constantin, you had this reaction.
Right.
Immediately my brain goes, ooh, what did I do?
Yeah, right. That's so true. So let's talk a little bit more about life purpose, because I feel like I actually struggle with this. Sometimes I feel like I have multiple life purposes, and I can feel that if this is true for me, it's true for a lot of other people. How do you help people hone in on a life purpose if they feel like I have so many things, I'm so purposeful, and there's so many things that I'm good at, there's so many things that I want to do, but I can't really hone in on what's the one thing that's going to help me be the most authentic, that's going to help me shine bright and feel like I'm in alignment with who I am and what I'm supposed to be doing in this life?
Love that question, Dr. Lino. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Should you have just one purpose? Should it be just one?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, for some people, it won't be. For me, not one purpose either. There might be an overarching theme, and then from there you have sub-purposes, let's say, or sub-whys.
Right.
And it's funny because when I finally honed in on what I thought my purpose was, so this was 2022, mid-2022, it's about a year and a half ago now, I was like, oh, this is my life's purpose, and I put it in a box. And I wasn't very fluid with it. I wasn't allowing it to just be. I was putting boxes around it, and I was putting my own interpretation of it and expectations around it. And it took me another 6 months or so of doing work to realize, wait a second, as you evolve as a human being, so does your purpose, so does your why. You get to understand it better. Some of it might even show up in your life until much later, because like anything else in life, there are stages, right? So if I want to become an amazing, let's say, soccer player, because I love soccer, well, I can't really jump into playing a game without learning how to pass the ball or how to do any of the basic elements of the game. Same thing I see with purpose or your why and everything else. So if you came to me and said, okay, I have these 6 things that I believe to be part of my purpose. Well, together we would find out to see, okay, is there a theme there that we're overlooking?
I love that.
Is there something that gives you more joy and fulfillment in that list?
Mm-hmm.
Now, for example, a big passion of mine, as I mentioned, was soccer. Another one was computer games. But also, I also remember that the big one for me has been around helping people. Like, I like to learn new things and then teach people. And I realized that was actually, even though all the 3 things I mentioned were big in my life throughout my entire life, the one that brought me the most joy and fulfillment at a soul level, at the heart level, was the helping of the people. Sure, soccer brought me lots of joy and fulfillment, but once I left the field, it was back to the status quo, back to what was normal, even though in that moment I felt so passionate. Now, that doesn't mean you can combine them. So for me, how do I combine them? Well, I coach soccer. I play soccer. I mentor people that want to become better at whatever they're doing. So that's how I'm combining different things. Same with computer games and other elements that I'm passionate about. And I'll end on that and I'll pass it back to you. Always try to, or rather, I should say, I always encourage people to look at it as, okay, passion versus something that really drives you. Because we have many passions in life, most of us.
Yeah.
But there's very few things that actually drive us.
Right. So passion versus something that actually drives you. What if there are several passions that drive you? How do you hone in on the most driven passion if you feel kind of conflicted with them?
So the way I would phrase it, and I would ask you back, that's a great question. I love that. And I love that we're going deep here. For a lack of a better approach that I have found, it's like, let's look at Western medicine. I go to a doctor, I have a problem, right? The first thing they do to make it better for you is they prescribe you some medication to treat what? The symptoms most of the time. And then if you're lucky, you have a really good doctor, they'll do tests and they'll try to find out the cause of it, right? What's at the bottom of it? Now, when we look at purpose very similarly, it's like or passions, like you said, it's you have multiple passions, right? At the surface level, you kind of understand why they're there, how they make you feel. But what I say is let's dig deeper. Let's look at the root of it. What's driving that passion? Is it your desire to help people?
Mm-hmm.
Is it your desire to feel included, to feel seen? What is it at the root of it? And what you'll end up finding for most people is that you will have a common ground. It might be the desire to help people. So now, to me, that's really more of around your why and your passion.
Right.
Or sorry, your purpose rather. Because now you're like, oh yes, you know what? I like doing those because I like helping people, but also because I like to give back, or maybe I like to be seen. Right? There's not just one answer that fits everyone's purpose or why. But by asking the right questions, you can always get to the right answer. And what I like to do when I talk to people, it doesn't matter if I do it professionally or in my personal life, it's always about asking questions and being curious. And if I can help you start challenging your own beliefs and your status quo, if you want to, right? That's when you get to the bottom of the why, right? To the root of the cause.
I love that. So basically, what's the root of the passion? What is it that drives you about the passion? What about that passion is driving you?
Yeah, like what gives you joy and fulfillment at the end of the day? Like if, let's say, you were take that one passion, it doesn't matter that you have 7, take one and say, I'm going to do this every day for the rest of my life. One would be, okay, so how does it make you feel?
Yeah.
And 2 would be, what's driving that? So if you wake up tomorrow morning and you might be sick, maybe you're coming down with a cold.
Yeah.
What's going to make you continue to execute on that passion? Because like going back to my example with soccer, when I was younger, I would play 7 days a week. Then it went down to 5 days a week. Now I play once or twice a week. It's no longer a passion when I wake up every morning and be like, I can't wait to put my cleats on and get on the field and score goals, because priorities have shifted.
Sure.
And I realized that, yes, it's a passion, but really my purpose and my why is a much bigger driver than just one passion.
Mm-hmm. I love this, Constantin. This is excellent. I love this.
And I love your questions. I mean, I haven't actually had anyone ask me to go that deep into it. And I love that, because it gets me thinking, and it reminds me of all the beautiful things that people are able to uncover when they really stop and question themselves in a way, right? Like take a look and find out the reasons below anything that you're struggling with. Because what I made a big mistake in my life, and I've learned from it since, is I was giving my power away to others. When I would stumble upon a challenge, sure, I was very good at solving challenges, but then I was always seeking validation. I'll go to my parents, my friends, my coworkers, be like, oh, is this the best path forward? What do you think? Or I have these 4 options. Can you help me get the answer? Even though the answers were already inside of me and I knew them, but I wasn't trusting myself, which I feel is one of the biggest challenges that most people I have had the pleasure to work with are struggling with, trusting themselves and trusting that they have the answer and then they will be okay. And you will be guided to the right answer if you have the right practices and modalities. And I believe you and I talked about trust offline before we even started recording.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I found that when people ask questions, especially when they ask the same question over and over, it's because they know the answer. They just don't trust themselves to push forward on that.
Yeah, or we have conflicting information in our heads too, right? That can unfortunately
definitely
affect it.
Yeah, I mean, the way we were brought up, exactly. Parents, outside influences, social media. I mean, it's really easy for people to get clouded in their own personal judgment from there on.
Absolutely, exactly.
So let's continue with before you got into and found your root of what made you passionate. What made you discover that you wanted to pursue becoming a holistic life empowerment mentor and coach?
That's a fabulous question. And to be honest, it wasn't something that I realized right away that it was my calling and something I wanted to do. And it came to me, well, in multiple ways. One, I always had feedback from people and be like, wow, I love the way you explain things. I love how you can take a big concept and break it down and make it so that I can understand it. And I've been mentoring and coaching people throughout my entire life. Started in school with soccer, but also as a math and physics tutor throughout university. And then I played poker professionally for a while, and I became a poker coach for many, many years, which I loved doing. And then again, moved to my professional or my corporate life, and I was a mentor and coach that I still am today. And there were hints sprinkled throughout my life. But again, I wasn't paying attention to it. What really made a big shift for me is when I actually went to Ecuador last year in 2022. It was April. And I took 3 weeks off from work coming out of the pandemic. We worked really hard to help enable people to be able to work from home. And I was working 12-hour days for a long time. So I was burnt out, a bit of depression perhaps. So I went on this mental health retreat. And one of the options of the mental health retreat was partaking in what they call plant medicine that was specific to the Amazonian jungle. The name of the plant medicine, there were 2 actually, but the primary one is ayahuasca, if you've ever heard of it, or the second one is Saint Pedro. And I'm someone that hasn't been drunk in my life and hasn't done any drugs, right? So for me to take a plant medicine, I was a bit skeptical, but I had an open mind. So I said, you know what, I'll go down, see what it's about, and if I feel comfortable, I'll try it. And let me tell you, that was transformational. I was there for 12 days. But what was transformational wasn't just the plant medicine. It was the environment, because we were up in the Andes Mountains in the middle of nature. The people there were very, it's amazing. If you could ever just visit Ecuador or any parts of South America, just gorgeous, gorgeous. And anyway, I got to see with people that were on various journeys in their life, right? Blue collar, white collar workers, people that were just volunteering there, the shamans, and the connection that you could feel between people, even from day one, before any medicine was administered, just like nothing I've ever seen before. And then it started to transition or challenge my belief system, because I have a mathematical background, so analytical background. And I'm like, okay, so science can prove this, but how can this be real? And I kept having my belief challenged the entire 12 days. And what I've seen on the medicine, amazing stuff. But what I've seen in the other people in the transformation, like, for example, one of my dear friends, I still talk to her often, even though she lives across the continent. She just came out of the ICU with COVID, almost died like 4 times. She could barely walk. She would have to talk slowly. She came to this retreat. I remember sitting with her or walking with her towards the end of the line, so to speak, because she had a hard time going up and down. And by day 7, I think it's day 7 or 8, she was playing soccer with us on the field, as if she had nothing done in her life. And she was closing in on 50, coming out of the ICU not long ago. And I'm like, how is that possible? I mean, I saw her with my own eyes that she could barely walk and she could barely do things, yet now we're playing soccer.
Yeah.
And she's doing better than people, 20 years younger. I'm like, okay,
Yeah, right.
there's something there. And I've seen a lot more transformations similar to that, but all of them unique.
But what was the transformation? What was the secret for that transformation?
It was the plant medicine and all the healing that the plant medicine allows you to do.
Oh my goodness.
So that was it. That was like, we had 5 ceremonies. Now, before I saw the transformation, she only had 2 or 3 ceremonies, and they involve a lot of work with the shamans. You take the medicine. There's a lot. Think of it as a combination of prayer and meditation, I want to say. And of course, when I did it was the first time I did anything like that. I thought that the plant medicine was the answer to everything. And I was like, wow, I can't wait to tell people about this. Then I realized that anything else, it's a tool that will work for some and may not work for others. It's a tool that should be used by some and definitely shouldn't be used by others. Right. And that's definitely something that people should do their homework on. I mean, I did thousands of hours of research. I'm happy to chat with anyone interested. But what I came to realize that you can achieve what, for example, plant medicine did for that lady or for me through meditation, through breath work, through many other modalities. And you and I, Dr. Lino, were talking before we went live about your journey through meditation and the healing you've been able to go through, right? And it's no different. It's just that the universe has given us so many methods for us to use to get to the answer. But sometimes the way we grow up, society doesn't necessarily want us to figure it out. It's actually easy. You just meditate and problems go away. No, it can't be that easy. And of course, our brains sometimes are like, nah, that sounds too good to be true.
Right. Constantin, well, what did you discover about yourself, though, when you were in South America with ayahuasca?
Oh, my gosh. So, I mean, I discovered a lot of things. First of all, I discovered that I knew nothing. Like, about how everything works, like the universe, the world, because the things I've seen through my own journey, but also the journey of others, challenged my entire belief system. So that allowed my already fairly open mind to be even more open. So when I came back, that's when the transformation really begins. I want to emphasize this big time. Because yes, I saw a lot of things. I had visions. I had beautiful journeys. But really, the transformation or the work begins after. And when I came back, I was, again, on cloud 9. I thought I changed so much internally. And I'm like, I can't wait to implement all these things and tell people and change people. And then, of course, no one else was on a journey. I was gone for 3 weeks, but no one else was, right? And I kind of hit my head against the wall with many things. And I, unfortunately, at the time, but fortunately looking backwards, I fell into a pretty massive depression for about 7 months because I was struggling with the integration component. I was struggling with, now, how do I interact with all these people in my life that I no longer necessarily feel a connection? Because I felt true connection with these people. And an example would be, so from the retreat, there were about 30 people in total. I stay in close touch a year and a half later with at least 10 to 15 of them. And at least 5 of them I consider very close friends. Now, these are people that I've only spent at most 12 days with, some only 7 days. Meanwhile, I've been where I am right now in Halifax, Nova Scotia for 6 years. And I do not have one friend or person I know that I have that close of a connection as I do with the people that I've spent only 7 or 12 days with.
That's incredible.
So of course, that's what challenged my beliefs back then and sent me down this rabbit hole. But during this depressive state is when I actually had a lot of time to sit with myself. And there was the missing link for me. Because as you and I were talking earlier,
Yeah.
I was really good at looking externally, like consuming the latest podcasts and the latest videos and reading the latest books and talking to the best mentors. But I never gave myself time to do any of the work or really dig into the work and look inwards. And by sitting with myself, emotions come up.
Oh yeah.
Emotions that I wasn't very good at processing before because I grew up what I did. I wasn't allowed to feel emotions and to work with them. And nobody showed me how I can do that, right? It's not something they teach you in school. Your family doesn't know either, right? Like most people don't know how to do that. So it wasn't until I sat down with my emotions and put in the work that I discovered my why, my purpose. And that it was around fall of last year. So about a year ago when I really put in the work, took everything I've learned, figured out my why and purpose. And from there, I put it in motion. And part of it, like for me, when it comes to, okay, what's my why and purpose? I kept it very simple, yet expansive, meaning it can grow and it can show up in different ways. For me, it's to inspire and empower others on this beautiful journey.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the time, I thought the answer was the podcast. I got to do a podcast, and that's all I have to do, and I'll be blissful. And then I realized, wait a second, I'm doing that through my mentorship and coaching, through my work, in my personal life. Why not add a layer of that? And then a layer of social media content. Then essentially it expanded because we looked at the why first, which is to be in service of myself and of others.
Mm-hmm.
And once you can realize that, it's like, oh, okay, so it's being in service. That means I can do it in many ways. It could be, let's say I have a lot of money. It might be just helping people with their bills. Or let's say I'm someone that's very good at a specific skill. It could be just sharing that with the world, right? It's all about how can you turn that being in service into whatever your skill set is.
How can you be of service with your skills?
Well, for example, I look at you, Dr. Leno.
Yeah.
You have your degree in clinical psychology, right?
Right.
How are you in service to others? Well, you have this amazing podcast. You have a unique journey. So part of your skills, it's the journey, the struggle you had to go through. And you're sharing that by not being only a host on a podcast like yours right now, but also being a guest on other podcasts. Right. So that's just being in service. I mean, you're already doing more than 99% of people do. So true. Right? Because most of us, and I've been there myself for most of my life, I was like, you know what? I'm going through depression. It must be just me going through this. No one else is feeling the way I'm feeling. Mm-hmm. Because that's what society tells us, or at least for most of my life it did, right? That your struggles are your own and you keep them to yourself, and then you put this fake smile on and you go on and tell the world how amazing you are because you have an amazing career, you know, a shiny new toy in the driveway and a big house. But that's not the case, right?
Constantin, when you were in those 7 months of depression and all of a sudden you are feeling emotions that you weren't allowed to feel before, what type of emotions did you feel? And how did you get past these emotions, or did you ever get past these emotions, or did you adopt them as part of your new self?
Oh, such a beautiful question. I would say all of the above. I mean, there are emotions I'm still going through right now. There are still many. I like to look at it as an onion, right? So as I'm peeling layers, as I get deeper and deeper, there's more to uncover. Sure, some may get healed faster than others, but there are emotions like anger and resentment and even hatred to some of the things I did in my life, like towards myself. And what I've realized is the biggest emotions that we hold, at least for me and some of the people I worked with, is emotions towards myself. And then that mirrors out into my life. Absolutely. So if I react to something my partner does, it's likely because a part of me feels wounded, as I like to call it now, my inner child. And then it reacts, it responds because there's something I haven't met within myself. And something I've done for the last, I'm looking at the calendar here, for the last 6 months or so, is work with a hypnotherapist to really dig deep into the subconscious mind. And it's really fascinating. I've done 3 sessions over Zoom, and it allowed me not only to see my 2-year-old self, my 3-year-old self, but heal those wounds, feel those emotions. I cried a lot in those sessions, but they were healing. And the first time I did it, it was just because I had an open mind and I said, you know what, the subconscious mind fascinates me. Let me try it out.
Me too.
Right? And it was like I did plant medicine, I did a bunch of other things, but the hypnotherapy session was in the top 3, if not top 2 experiences of my life, because I got to heal a lot. And even though, I felt drained because it was 2 hours long after the fact, I saw results pretty much the next day, which is what really blew my mind again. Because here I am working on, let's say, my reactivity with my partner specifically for the last 2 years. And I made maybe, 20% progress, because sometimes my subconscious kicks in before I can even become aware of it.
Oh, yeah.
And now I did this work with this lady for 2 hours, and like 90% of my triggers are gone. 90% of my reactions are gone. Now I'm going up the stairs and I'm like, I should be triggered about it, but I'm not. And my mind goes like, what's just happening? It's like, I don't understand this.
Yeah.
But it's because
That's
we stay with ourselves
incredible.
being healed. Yes.
That's incredible, and it's beautiful, where because there's a lot of healing modalities where people, all they're doing is touching the consciousness. They're not going into the subconscious, and that's what needs to be healed. The traumas, the pains, the past traumas, DNA traumas, family traumas, it's all being stored in our subconscious. And unless we uncover that stuff, I mean, it's going to keep replaying on repeat over and over and over, with us not even being aware of it.
Yeah. And what I got to find out, which was fascinating to me, is that about 95% of our actions are done by our subconscious mind. Our conscious mind only takes care about 5% of what we do. Like me talking to you right now is just my conscious mind.
Yeah.
But everything else is the subconscious mind. So because I'm a techie guy, I work with computers all the time, I almost equate it to, let's say I have my laptop here and I have Windows 11 on it. But what if I had Windows 95 on it?
Yeah.
We wouldn't be able to even have this conversation right now, right?
Right. That's
And
true.
that's how most of us work with, because like some of the old beliefs and limiting beliefs and trauma I got to heal was from like 30, 35 years ago. I mean, that's very old programming that has no place into this life.
Yeah.
So,
I
yeah,
love how you're relating this to programming and computers. It's the same thing, and it makes
it
perfect
is.
sense.
It is. And once you get to see that, that's how I saw it. And I'm like, oh, shoot, okay, I need to dig deeper into this. And that's been one of the biggest blessings of being on shows like yours or having my own podcast, where I get to see different takes on life, on things that may be believed to be true, and challenge my own thought process, challenge my own beliefs. And sometimes I come to the conclusion, you know what, my belief is what I want to stick with, and that's fine. But sometimes you're like, wait a second, there's more there. I need to think about this. I need to do more research. And I feel that your role as a podcast host and guest, my role as a podcast host and guest, your role as a therapist or clinician, and my role as a coach or mentor is not to change anyone's mind, not to push our views on them, but to help them get to their own answers. Because like we talked earlier, everyone has those answers within. It's just like we have a lot of mess on top of it.
Oh yeah, we definitely do.
Yeah.
And so how were you able to, how are you doing now with the depression?
So it's nothing is perfect, but I'll be honest with you, I've had 99% good days. Some days are still, I wake up and I'm like, why am I feeling this way?
Sure.
And here's the mistake I made when those days do happen. Again, I'm rushing through the motions, or I should, let me rephrase. I used to rush through the motions and be like, I don't want to feel this way. I need to get back to feeling good again. And what does that do? Well, it prevents you from truly feeling those emotions. You're pushing them down again. And like a volcano, they're going to come up eventually, right?
Definitely.
So when I finally had that aha moment, I'm like, okay, let them come through, right? And like we talked earlier, and this is something I'm still working on because it's not always very easy to do, is find out the reason why. So why am I all of a sudden today feeling like this? So let's dig into it. Oh, it's something maybe that I said yesterday and I didn't realize it. Or maybe something that someone else did and I'm allowing it to influence my life. As opposed to me taking control of it and saying, you know what you did is what you did, has nothing to do with me.
Sure. And sometimes it could even be not resting well enough or getting enough sleep or doing too much, not allowing your body to rejuvenate. through the night to
Exactly.
rebuild itself.
Yeah, I mean that, and I'm going through a process where I'm working on my physical health because I was so focused on my career and doing other things that I ignored my physical health for a while, right? So when I have a meal that is too heavy, that could cause issues as well, right? Because I become more lethargic, something happens, and my hormones go out of whack, right? The chemistry gets messed up a bit. So there's so many factors that none of us will truly know, but we can at least do some digging and say, okay, why are we feeling? And what helped me the most, I actually have 2 journals here. I journal because that allows me to put my thoughts on paper and also go back and say, oh, wait a second, so I felt like this here and here, and I can kind of see a trend, right? And if you don't have time to journal, which is something I never made time for before, and even today I may skip a day or two, talking to myself was a huge one. And that sounds as silly as you may think, because to me, when my mentor told me, hey, for 10 minutes a day, try to talk to yourself from the heart, not about what you're going to do later or what you did earlier, but truly what you're feeling. Yeah. And the first time I had no idea what to talk about. The second time I did, all these things came up. Oh, I feel tired, but why do I feel tired? Oh, I feel angry. Well, why do I feel angry? And as you dig deeper, and again, try to allow your mind to take a rest and come from your heart, things started to shift. I remember one of these days when it's literally the weekend, I recorded some amazing episodes of my podcast, which always bring up my energy and my joy and fulfillment. But then the next day I was feeling down for whatever reason. I couldn't figure it out. So I remember sitting on the couch for the first time in like 3 months, and I'm like, I'm not feeling great. And I remember the practice that my mentor told me. So I said, you know what? I'm going to come downstairs, sit in my chair, and I'm going to just talk to myself. And I did that for about 12 minutes. And when I was done doing that, I felt so much better. It's like a different person from 12 minutes before. And I remember like just sitting in my chair and be like, what's going on again? This doesn't make any sense. All I did was just talk to myself. But what I did in that moment is allow those emotions to come up. I allowed them to be felt. And also I looked for some of the potential reasons. And now my mind and my heart got more in alignment. And yeah, was it perfect? Was I feeling, like 100%? No, but it was like 90%. It was close enough for me.
I have to admit that sometimes I have issues with myself, allowing myself to feel certain emotions. Because my thing is, I'm afraid it's all fear, of course, a little less fear here, right? But some of my fears are, if I allow myself to feel angry or upset or sad, I'm afraid that it's going to go into like this cycle and I won't be able to stop. And I'll gain this momentum, and then I'll get sad, then I'll get depressed. But it's like, hold up a minute, let's just let it out. And as soon as I let it out, within an hour, I'm laughing and smiling again. It's like, I just needed to let it out. Quite literally, it's just trapped in my body. It's trapped energy. And if you can release that energy, you're going to allow your heart to start beating again and blooming and smiling. And it's really incredible the way that works, actually.
Wow, you hit the nail on the head. Absolutely. I mean, they say emotions are energy in motion.
That's exactly what it is.
But if you stop your energy from coming out, from emotions from coming out, then what's going to happen? You're stopping that energy movement. And like you said, it's all about releasing that energy, ideally in a way that doesn't impact the rest of the people and environment in a negative way, right? Because like, for example, me, I would allow those energy bursts sometimes to come out in a less than ideal way by maybe raising my voice, being sarcastic, hurting people, right? And that's one way energy will find its way to get out, right? Because like a volcano, you're suppressing everything, and then eventually it's going to have to come out. There's no other way.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why it's important to practice healthy, constructive ways in releasing these energies, so that it doesn't come out in all other ways, like you said, sarcastic or being a punk to someone by accident. I didn't mean to. It's trapped energy within me. And recognizing that. So let's talk about your podcast, Constantin.
Oh, yes, the podcast.
So, Unleash Thyself. I love that title. How did you come up with the title, and when did you start podcasting, and why did you start podcasting?
Thank you. I mean, let's start with the why first. We'll give the title in a second, because the why came first. So I remember I was actually on a long road trip with a dear friend of mine, and we were talking about an alternative healer that has been able over like 25 years to help people heal anything from fibromyalgia to cancers to like pretty serious illnesses. And in that process, learn more and more about themselves. And this healer is someone that both her and I knew because it was the same practice that we went to when we were 25, and then later when we were 35. And I'm like, as we're talking about this, and I'm challenging some of the things that she's saying, and she's giving me good reasons behind it, I had this light bulb moment, and I remember myself driving. At the same time I was driving, I would see myself in third person, having a heart-to-heart conversation with this individual, and then having the world listen and bringing out this knowledge to the world, because I couldn't fathom the fact that even though someone claims to have those gifts, has only really helped about 1,000 or so people, or let's say, even 10,000 people, when there's billions of people that could use their help. So then the idea formed where okay, what if I interview amazing individuals that have been able to find out their why, of course, and overcome something in their life, and then are willing to share that with others, so that maybe someone else in the audience can pick up something and feel inspired, feel empowered,
Right.
maybe find something they can apply in their life.
Sure.
That's why, like, when you shared your story at the beginning, I'm like, okay, this is someone I want to bring. Because, I mean, I've learned a few things from you right in those couple of minutes that we talked. Can we imagine after we have a full 1 hour conversation or more,
Oh, yeah.
what other people can relate with and say, you know what? If Dr. Lino can do that, I can do whatever I'm going through myself.
Exactly. Oh, and that's why I love podcasting. I love inspiring people, as I know your story is going to inspire someone. And if it's better one than none, I always say.
Exactly, right? And it's like, and that was the why, and the why it started, right? And that was like back when I was going up and down through my depression. Now the title didn't come to me until much later. I want to say maybe February of this year, and I was struggling to come up with a name. And I was trying to use my tagline, which is learn, grow, love together. That's kind of my tagline on the show. And I'm like, you know what? I can't come up with a name. I'm going to use my tagline. And a very good friend of mine, he challenged me on it and said, hey, that's not going to be something that people can just search in Google and it's going to come up as your podcast. You need to find a unique name.
Mm-hmm.
And gave me good perspective. And I sat in meditation for a day. Nothing came up really good. And I remember this one night, I was laying in bed, about to fall asleep. And that's when the name came to me. And I remember grabbing my phone and quick, I'm like, oh, is this name available? Is anyone else using it? I'm like, no, it's available. The website is available, unleashthyself.com. I'm like, okay, this must be it. So that's how the name came about. So for me, I get amazing ideas when I'm in solitude, when I'm in silence. And I find that many people are very similar, but we don't give ourselves enough time to be with our own thoughts,
Right.
with ourselves, really.
Exactly. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Constantin Morun here on A Little Less Fear podcast, talking about his incredible mission to inspire, empower, create positive change, Unleash Thyself podcast. He's a holistic empowerment mentor coach. Thank you so much for being on my podcast. How can our viewers, our watchers, and our listeners find you and your podcast?
Thank you, Dr. Lane. It's been such a pleasure to chat with you. Now, if you want to find me, the podcast Unleash Thyself is available on YouTube and all the major podcasting platforms, or at unleashthyself.com. You can find us on TikTok and Instagram, where we post content daily. Again, the idea is to inspire and empower you on this beautiful journey. If you want to connect with me specifically, LinkedIn at Constantin Morun, best way, or send me an email, Constantin at unleashthyself.com. And my name, Constantin, is with a C, and it does not have an E at the end. So it's just as easy as that. Send me a message. We'd love to talk to anyone that wants to chat.
Incredible. I love your energy. I love that we're connected now, and we're definitely keeping in touch, and I can't wait to be on your podcast. Thanks so much for being on mine. Wishing you and your loved ones incredible wisdom, light, and a beautiful life.
Thank you, and likewise to you, and thank you to the audience for listening in.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Constantin.
Thank you, Dr. Lino. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you all so much for tuning in to the Dr. Lino Show, A Little Less Fear podcast. If you'd like to get a hold of me, you can do so by sending me an email at alittlelessfear@gmail.com or through an inquiry from my website at www.alittlelessfear.com, where you will always find information on where to get my book. You can get my book on Amazon and Amazon paperback version, Kindle or Kindle Unlimited. And I also create incredible visual video poetry for people that are interested in marketing, or even just to send a personal note to anybody or somebody that you might love. So yeah, check it out. I love it. Poetry is my passion, one of my other passions, aside from doing what I do right now, which is giving you all the motivation that you need to keep growing, to keep motivating people, motivating yourself, and to keep expanding. I love you all so much. Have a blessed day and take care. Rock on.